Hey Jennifer, alright, so here's your past life reading, or your spread I should say. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you were, what you did with the majority of your time there, an important day with the relationship and the feelings involved, another important day with relations and feelings, and the death over here and the lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout, okay? So all you have to do is make connections where you can based off of what comes through here. So I'm just going to be receiving images and impressions, and I'll let you know what's coming through kind of thing, and that's where we'll make connections, and I'll try to help however I can. So just keep in mind there are a couple of ways to make connections, okay? There's direct and opposite. Direct connections is when you can directly connect with what's coming through here. Opposite is when whatever comes through, you can connect in an opposite way. Like, for example, if someone dies of smoking in a past life, they smoked a lot and they loved it, they might come back in another life and absolutely hate smoke, can't stand the smell, might be allergic to it just because they experienced that, and then their soul wants to experience something else kind of thing, okay? So just keep that in mind. And remember that you have to resonate and connect with what comes through. Like, personally, you have to connect. If you don't, you might just want to tuck it in the back of your mind for a later time, because sometimes things come up in like the days, weeks, months, even a year later. It might connect later on, okay? All right, so let's start. So first of all, where we're starting. This card here is actually, it's the Nomad card. It's the card that speaks of like not having a home base. So a lot of times we see people come back, and how you might connect with that just right off the bat is if, one, you came back into this life to make sure that you like picked a family that was rooted down in a community, part of a community, knew your neighbors, you had your folks, your whole family there, that kind of thing. On the other hand, a direct connection would be if you found yourself coming back into a life where you might have felt neglected or abandoned, or you moved around a lot, like you never settled in a place long enough where you would have like lifelong friends, or just like keep the same friend over the course of a lifetime, maybe move schools, that kind of thing is what we're seeing here. This card is also a card of like mobility and the wanderer card. So this can also speak to, if you feel connected to the idea of a traveler, of being a traveler, of loving to travel. This would be something that would be a direct connection if you just like, if you're good at adapting to change, if you're good at adapting to mobility, or even if you prefer it, if you prefer, let's say, even like a job where you get to travel, or just the kind of lifestyle that allows you to be a little bit more mobile, free. And also this would speak to a desire for independence. So if you find that that is a direct connection, you would be someone that desires independence, making sure that you can kind of make it on your own kind of thing, making sure that you don't have to rely on someone. In fact, that might be the kind of thing that would put up walls, for example, where you might even find it hard to let certain people in, romantic or not, because that would include kind of forming an attachment that may end up being dependent on someone, and that might be a fear of yours or something that makes you greatly uncomfortable, okay? That would be the direct connection. The opposite connection would be if you came back and you just, you love people taking care of you, and you like the help, and you like relying on others, and you don't want to have to work so hard for it. You know what I mean? So connect with that however you can, and we're still getting, I'm still getting information filtering through that will come through as we keep going along, as far as where you were even in the world, because what they're showing me right now is just like they're plopping me into a childhood, and this kid, I feel like, okay, yeah, so we're looking at a young boy. So a boy would be, for example, if you connect in your youth, or even now, if you considered yourself, or still do, a tomboy kind of thing, or if you had traits that would be considered, I guess, more masculine by society standards. And by that I mean, again, someone who's like able to make your own way, more opinionated, kind of like independent, like that kind of thing, like boys versus girls, you know, even though I don't like to say it like that, because, you know, girls can be just as, you know, independent and strong as boys, of course, but we're looking at like how typically we would define boyish ways, right? That kind of thing. So let's see what else is, we're gonna go ahead to the next card, but keep making connections with what we're talking about here, okay? This can also mean that you actually yearn for a community if you don't have one. This would speak to someone who, because you didn't have it, yearning for a community, yearning to feel rooted down, or the feeling of never really having a home or feeling like your home and wishing for that or wanting that, or even if you don't wish or want for it, the feeling might be there. So keep making connections. And we're gonna go to this card here, which is what you did with the majority of your time or how you felt. And this card is the take care of me card. So it's really interesting because we're getting the take care of me card with someone who is uprooted and doesn't have a stable foundation. And this card, more than anything, so we get this card sometimes when it is people who are like taken care of. But this take care of me card here, it almost feels like it's a spoken word, like take care of me, please, like that kind of thing, because there isn't anyone to take care of you. It does feel like we're looking at a young person who is abandoned, not, I don't even want to say at birth, but youth, like very young. And I want to say it's circumstances, and it feels like the circumstances are having to do with almost like if there was a bombing and people died in the bombing, or it's like a traumatic explosion, something almost like a factory explosion kind of thing is what it feels like. And the parents worked there, and so they died and the child was left alone. And it does feel like the child had a sibling, but there might have been a disconnect with the sibling in such a way that maybe the kid, it's almost like the sibling was so young that this child couldn't take him in hand and take care of him or take him with him. So it feels almost like we're looking at a foster care system type of thing, but this young kid, almost like I want to say this feels like this aspect that we're looking at of you, this boy ran away, and ran away when he realized the younger brother, which was a baby, it felt like a baby toddler type of thing, was given to a family to be taken care of, and the boy didn't want to go to another family. So it feels like we're looking at this boy kind of hitting the streets and starting to take care of himself very young. And it feels like we're looking at someone who's very innovative and entrepreneurship-like, but based on survival rather than passion, if that makes sense. So if you find that you work based on survival, or you do things, but if you find that your motivation that gets you going the most has to do with survival versus passion, this would be a message for you to kind of like pause and consider that and process that and do your best to try to come at, I want to say, new ventures in your life based on passion and excitement and like a desire to do it rather than out of survival. And you'll find that the universe will have your back. Like you'll find that the resources will come to you, the people, the connections will come to you when you switch gears to come at something from a different motivation. Now, the other connection would be if you already do that because this life was survival from the get-go, so that you might have come back in this life where you're like, I'm only doing it if I like it and it brings me joy. So however you might connect with that concept, but this also does speak about someone who is entrepreneurial in the sense of like, I almost want to say this feels like he sells flowers on the road and he sells newspapers, or if, you know, that kind of thing. And it does feel like we are looking at a time period where there is printing. So we're looking at, I want to say, considered more modern, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like it's this century kind of thing. It feels like if we're looking at anything, this would be, I would say this would be no, what's it called? No, closer, like nowhere past like the year 1900. It feels like it would be before that. So we're looking in the 1800s. This feels like we're looking in, this is either United States or this is UK, because this is very like English speaking based. This place is an English speaking based place. And it feels like at this time we're looking at wherever he is, there's not a lot of diversity going on at this time. Okay, so what you might want to do, that's going to be kind of hard though. I would want to say like, because this factory explosion I feel like is a big deal. So I would go ahead and Google and see if there were any factory explosions in England in the mid to late 1800s, see if that's a thing. This also speaks to newspapers too. Okay, so you might have a thing for reading versus watching. Like you might be someone that's like, I want to read the book, not watch the movie. Or you might really like the idea of like reading the paper rather than getting your news through social media, like that kind of thing, like kind of like an old-fashioned feel for reading, almost like reading is a lost art. If you feel that at all, like reading is a lost art, why don't we bring reading back? That kind of thing. I know it's random and weird, but that would be a connection here, because I feel like this boy spent a lot of time with papers under his arms. At the same time, that opposite connection would be if you are sick of reading, you don't like reading because there's so much time spent with the news and reading. But this, speaking of the news, this can be like if you are someone that's like, I don't even not want to watch the news, I am sick of the news. Or it could be the opposite, where he was very involved in the news, but it's more about the marketing of the news. So this can also speak, because we're talking about entrepreneurial, if you want to start your own business, also marketing might be a forte of yours. Like it, not even like, it doesn't mean that you have to be a marketer. It can mean that you are very skilled in the art of selling. Or if you've ever been pulled to or interested in selling, like a salesman, but not salesman-y kind of like tactics, but more authentic, genuine connection that also reaps the rewards of selling your wares, if that makes sense. So we're looking at making connections with people in order to get the results that you want. So I feel like this might be coming through just in case you are in your life, if you're thinking like, what should I do with my next step? Maybe you're looking for a new job, or you're looking to start a business, or you're looking like just this next step kind of thing. What do I do that has to do with either making money or, you know, networking or something like that? This doesn't feel like your personal life. It would be like your career business kind of thing. This would tell you that you have a knack / a good direction to go in would be to make sure that you make connections with people on a very human level, and you'll get what you want that way. And I know how when it's said that way, it sounds like maybe kind of sneaky, like, oh, I'm just making connections to get what I want, but it's not like that. I feel like if you genuinely make connections with people, it's going to feel and be genuine and authentic on both ends, and it's going to almost be like that person wants to help you or join your cause or whatever it may be. I feel like this also goes into the take care of me card. It's not taking advantage of people, even though it can be seen that way. And I feel like that's a very specific concept that you might be able to connect to on another level about taking advantage of people versus, it's like taking advantage of people isn't what it seems, or as I'm talking, it's like, it's not what you think it is. So if there's something going on in your life that you're thinking about where you might at first feel like, and this can be now or coming up, so keep this in the back of your mind in case you don't connect right now, but if something comes up where you feel like, oh, I couldn't do that, that doesn't feel ethical or moral, I would actually say pause and just sit with it and understand that when it comes to things being unethical or immoral or vice versa or whatever, it has to do with the person. So you're not using people if your intentions are not merely to use them. If you make genuine, authentic connections and they happen to contribute to your cause, whether it's emotionally, physically, or financially, it's like you have to understand that's because they want to, because they can understand that you're being genuine. And it's almost like I want to say, step into the receiving energy, because this here feels like it was a bit desperate because of survival. So it's almost like you had to, there's receiving energy when you receive things because people want to be part of the cause, versus this receiving energy where it's almost like a receiving taking energy. So basically what I want to say is, if you have an issue receiving gifts from people, even compliments, that kind of thing, if you have any issues with that, this would be a message for you to try your best to allow yourself to be comfortable accepting. Okay? Accepting, receiving, that kind of thing. I feel like this is more like a message or a call for you to really try to be more comfortable receiving and not doubting yourself, or not, there's something coming up like the feeling of imposter syndrome. If you don't know what that is, Google it. And if you can connect with that in any way, your job will be to try to readjust or shift your mindset when it comes to that. Okay? And it's almost like allowing yourself to feel like you deserve to receive, if that makes sense. Okay, so just connect with that however you can, because this take care of me card is more of a please take care of me, versus in this life, it's going to be like, oh, you want to take care of me. All right, I accept, I allow, I receive. Like it's a more graceful acceptance. This is more of like a grasping acceptance, if that makes sense. Like a need versus an allowance. There's a difference. It's a difference in energy, literally. So keep making sure you can. Now, you also might be able to connect to England or London. I feel like it's, again, these English-speaking places, but then it's also having a vibe of like what you might consider New York City. And I know they're very different, but in the same way, energetically, they're similar because of the time period we're in, because they're both a hub for communication and journalism. And so I feel like if you connect at all with either of those places, or what you might consider a hub for journalism or communication even today, that would be a connection in itself. So just consider that something, some food for thought, and we're gonna go ahead to the first important day. Let me adjust that a little bit. There we go. Okay, so the first important day here. This is the move, 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 let's go card, and it's a card showing like people are usually fleeing, and this here is a child card for the relationship. We're looking at child or children, and here is just rolling right along. The just rolling right along card. Okay. So what's coming through here is this idea of inequality and injustice when it comes to the classes or society, because it feels like on this day what we're looking at is, so it feels like because you're selling the paper, right? We're looking, like basically we're looking at a newsy kind of thing. And I feel like I just got a reading for a newsy like last month or something. So that's interesting. But there's something about the newsy, like the boys, lower class, obviously. And then it feels like on this day, you're looking, whatever's happening here, you guys are being made to relocate for some reason, and you're seeing, it's like, I feel like what they're doing is they're putting me through your eyes, this boy's eyes, and watching another family, and you see a boy that's like your age, and he doesn't have to like get out of the way or something. And so this is kind of profound, because you're having a moment of realizing the difference in society, the difference in classes, the mistreatment of people just simply based on their monetary value or monetary worth. So what we're looking at here, how you might connect, is how you feel about money. What is your relationship to money? Do you see money as a dirty thing? Do you see money as something that brings happiness? How do you connect with money, and what's going on right now with you, or maybe what might be coming, but what's going on that is happening with, it's monetary, and it's also societal dissonance, like the difference in classes. So, it's really interesting. What's coming to mind is the idea of like, with the quarantine thing and the vaccine thing, how the older people are getting it first because they are the most vulnerable, right? So we're going by who's the most vulnerable to the least vulnerable. It's kind of equating to that, but here it has to do with money. So like the wealthiest get to roam where they will, where the poorer have to be, it's almost like the idea of being behind gated areas. Like you cannot cross the gates because you are poor. Like, you know what I mean? So how you might connect is if the issue of class distinction is triggering to you, if that triggers you on an emotional level, and or the idea of like, if you're someone that really like roots for the underdog, and or it can also be if you are an activist or you are into helping with causes that have to do with people who are at a disadvantage. And what's coming to mind is the idea of like women, let's say women who are abused and they had to leave their life behind, and then there's these agencies that help them get back on their feet, give them like work clothes, sets them up on interviews, like that kind of thing. That might be coming up, by the way, if you do connect with this, that might be coming up in a way where if you're looking to do something with like a new hobby or volunteer, or even starting a business or starting a nonprofit, you may do very well when it comes to helping the down and out. specifically, it can even be like battered women or disadvantaged people, or it can be disability or whatever, but it can also be like children in the foster system, foster care kind of thing. This might also speak, when I say that, what's coming through also, you might connect with the idea of how you feel about adoption and fostering and being a foster parent, even like that kind of thing. Or again, the idea of like volunteering is coming up. Almost like, I want to say, if you're wanting to do something for a good cause, these things we're talking about might actually do something where if you begin them or you take a step in that direction, it's going to be like a domino effect that's going to open up new opportunities for you personally in that way. So just something to consider, because it's coming through very clearly. It has to do with class distinction. So another way you can connect with this would be, a direct connection would be if you were born in this life making sure that you would be financially secure. Now, the thing is that could come where you feel like you might be compromising happiness or passion or something else in order to have the financial security. And if that's the case, this would just be coming through with a message that you actually don't have to compromise. You will be fine. But if you have any fears that you won't be fine financially or taken care of or all your needs met, that fear stems from here. And that fear doesn't have to be a hindrance in this current life. If it is, it doesn't have to be a hindrance in this current life. Once you realize that the fear stems from another time and that it doesn't belong in this current lifetime. Now, you can also have been born the opposite, where having gone through this, you know how to be frugal. You know that you will take care of everything, that everything will be fine, that your needs will be met, and you'll make it happen. Like we were talking about that before. It's like you're someone who's independent, will make it happen because you had to here. So I feel like the survival techniques or mechanisms are part of you, and they can either be hindering you in the way of you compromising joy in order to survive, or they might be helping you in the sense that you have what it takes to make whatever you want to work. And you have to trust yourself enough to know that and allow yourself to be, again, in that receiving energy in order to see how doors will open and how connections will be made and resources will be found if you just take steps in that direction, whatever it may be. Okay? So just something to consider. This can also, I think we already talked about the idea of children. But on another level of how you might connect with children, if you came back into this life and you decided not to have children, that can be an opposite connection here, where it's like you saw what happened to you. It's like you never know what's going to happen. So it's like almost like you don't want children for the idea of like something bad can happen, and you just maybe never knew why you didn't want children, but it can stem from this. Whereas on the other hand, you might also, the opposite thing would be, you want a big family, you want children, you want to provide for children, you want to have a family or be surrounded by kids so that you can give them what they deserve and a great childhood and that kind of thing, that this aspect of you was not able to have because you had to grow up so quickly. But I do want to say there is something very creative and innovative about this boy's mind. So that energy here that we're seeing, the innovation and creativity, is part of you. So you probably already know that, but we're looking at intelligent, innovative, hence entrepreneurial kind of thing, and creative. And I want to say that those are energies that you want to make sure that you are tapping into and that you can utilize in this life now. So keep that in mind, keep making connections. And we're going to go to the next important day. Okay, so here we have the Wowzer card, and this is usually a card where it's like an aha moment. There's like light bulb on, like that kind of thing. And then the relationship with it is the soul group card, which we usually with the soul group, we see people come in and out of lifetimes together to learn lessons from each other. The thing with the soul group is that not all of these people are going to be like your best friend. Some of them come across as jerks or enemies because even those people teach us lessons. They teach us lessons in like boundaries and how to be strong and how to say no and that kind of thing, like testing our limits. And the feeling here, this is kind of like a lonely feel. This is lonely and isolated kind of card. So with this, I want to say we are looking at Something's happening where there are certain boys where you're growing up. So right now I feel like we're looking at someone who's a teenager kind of thing, and you're still doing the whole like selling things on the streets, making it work, trying to, you know, pocket as much as you can. And we're seeing being approached by people who have money. I want to say connected people. I feel like you're being approached for a deal, like someone wants to hire you. It's almost like they saw you do something very innovative in order to make a sale. So this person offers you a job off the streets. And I want to say this person is that soul group person where you would not have met them if you hadn't done that very innovative technique. I'm trying to see what it is. It's almost like I want to say this is where you... Okay, so we were talking before about how it might feel icky to use what you got in order to get resources. It feels like here you almost like faked an illness or you faked an injury, and that person paid you to make sure that you would kind of like let them off the hook or something, or it was something kind of sneaky, but again, innovative here, like you had to survive. So the survival thing here, this does not mean it's going to follow up in your current life. In your current life, I feel like what we're looking at is someone who doesn't have to, doesn't have to, like fold to using sneaky means to get what they want. Rather, they can just be, you can just be creative, innovative, and not have to question the morality of things. Whereas here, he had to use what he had, which here on this day, it was a bit sneaky. However, the person that saw him and hired him liked that in him. So what we're getting here is the idea that you never know what is going to happen when you make a decision. So it's almost like this person, this aspect of you, followed his gut, followed his intuition, even if it seemed sneaky or underhanded. He followed his intuition, which led him to a job that was very lucrative. More money than he's ever seen. And I want to say what we're looking at here is questioning what defines morality, what defines ethics. Almost like you get to choose how to define what is moral in your life and what rules to follow. I guess it's almost like I want to say to check in with yourself where you are programmed in such a way that what society has taught you, what you've learned growing up, how are those things affecting you in a way that's holding you back or hindering you? And how I want to put it is almost like the good girl syndrome, right? Like if you're a good daughter, a good girl, a good wife, a good this, a good that, then you're going to be following certain rules, and those rules don't allow you to like expand, I want to say expand your mind in such a way that would allow you to try new things because it might look a certain way that is outside of the box of good girl role. Does that make sense? So it's almost like what we're seeing here, this is not to be judged. What is happening here, like him doing what is, I keep saying sneaky, but this isn't about judging. This is about using the tools that you were born with and using the tools that are a part of you and redefining the rules of how you live your life and not living by other people's rules in order to see the results that you feel you want to see, the results that you are being pulled towards, if that makes sense. Not just results. I guess what I'm saying is like the life that you want to see. So we're looking at manifesting, right? In a sense, this is manifestation. If you want to see a certain life around you, a certain reality, if you want a certain reality, you're going to have to rewrite the rule book a little bit, because what we've been taught only allows us to have a certain reality, a 9-to-5 job. If you're, be a wife and a mother and wake up at a certain time and get to bed by a certain time and don't eat those foods and just eat, look this way, don't look that, wear makeup, like all these rules, right? All the rules that you've been taught may not be conducive towards you reaching a goal that you're passionate about, or reaching or creating a reality that you would be feeling most fulfilled and happy with. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So here we're seeing a day where this aspect of you did not follow the rules of society, right? They didn't follow the rules, but it's because of how he was instilled with the need to survive from a young age, that he knew from a young age that, hey, this rule book is not going to work for me. I'm not going to be able to feed myself and clothe myself if I follow the rules and be a good boy, right? So if you've ever had to, I want to say in your life, if that's ever come up, the whole like being a good girl and fitting a certain role, and even like the idea of being surrounded by people who might not allow you or might not make it easy for you to change in certain ways that you've been drawn to change or transform. You have to be aware of that, because if you're feeling a pull to transform yourself, whether emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, in any way transform, you have to try to allow yourself to let it happen. And that's also being in a receiving energy, because you're receiving ideas and notions and downloads and hits on what your inner being needs in order to transform to the very best version of yourself, the version that wants the reality where it does feel fulfilled and happy. So you have to be in that receiving energy and receive those ideas, but also take action on it. Also allow the transformation to happen and not let other people keep you in the role that you're in or keep you in a box. So if that's ever been a theme in your life, this would just be a message for you to allow yourself to transform in the ways that are pulling at you. Okay, that's very important. And this isolation card is a big one, because you might feel isolated. It might feel lonely. You might feel like you're alone for a long time until your tribe steps in, because you might be surrounding yourself with people right now that are not serving your best interest. We'll say that. And you'll know these people by how they make you feel like you want to, not want to, they might make you feel limited, or like you have to act a certain way or answer a certain way or look a certain way, whatever it is. Those people that make you feel that way, that's a telling sign that those are not the people that are best suited for your transformation, essentially. And do what you will with that, you know what I mean? But when you cut ties with certain people, you're clearing space to allow your tribe in, people who will be encouraging of your transformation, okay? But it sometimes is hard, because it does feel isolating, because everyone, when they go through transformation, they do lose people, they friends or colleagues if you leave a job because it no longer serves you. But it's part of life, it's part of the transformation, and it can be hard, but there's lessons in that. And ultimately, when you risk that kind of, I want to say that kind of transformation, like when you do it, it's a risk, because you may feel lonely for a time or isolated, or you might feel like you're the only one going through it, but that will lead to the reward of that reality that will feel the most fulfilling, with people that make you feel like the best, most authentic version of yourself, or at least allows you to express the most authentic version of yourself. All right? So keep making connections where you can with this whole thing, because it is a leveling up day, because this aspect followed his gut and did what he had to do, and didn't care what it would look like or what people might say if he got caught, we'll say, okay? So I'm not telling you to be sneaky, I'm just saying listen to your intuition and your gut and redefine the rules of your life. You have that control and power to do that, you do. So keep making connections, we're gonna go to the death. So this death card is the natural death card, and I wanna say that it's a natural death, like later in life, but the thing about this card that's coming through is, I want to say he earned it. I hate to say it like that, but it's coming through like that. Like this aspect of you earned the easy, natural death, because you didn't allow others or society to dictate your path. And so it's like, you did good. You did good. That's what I feel like is coming through, you know? So keep making connections where you can with that. And then here we're coming to the lesson. So the lesson card here, this is the experience card. And I want to say again that this relates exactly to rewriting the rule book, and how I want to say most people don't do it. It's either they're too scared, or it doesn't even cross their mind, because they're so programmed that their life feels like it's natural. Like the rules that were written for them that they've learned feel natural, but it's not. So it's like once you start processing it, you realize how many rules have been written for you rather than you having written them. So many people who, that's why it's like so many people, for example, what's coming through is the example of a lot of women wanting to get married by a certain age. 25, I need to get married by 25, and I need to have kids, and I want to have 2 of them, and I want to have a girl and a boy. It's like all these things. It's not really what they actually want. It's what they see their parents had. It's what they see on TV. It's what their friends say they want. Do you know what I mean? So they don't actually truly experience a life where their desires, their innermost authentic, genuine desires are met or even voiced or even acknowledged. And this life we're looking at here of this aspect of you, this aspect basically had no choice but to acknowledge the rules that weren't, it's like the rules that he had to write. He had to acknowledge that he had to rewrite the rules for himself because the rules by society otherwise left him out in the cold, would have had him in an orphanage, would have had him abused probably, would have had him on the streets, would have had him maybe hooked on drugs, who knows. But he's like, no, I'm gonna make my own way. I know I'm a certain age, right? So at this age that he started being a little businessman, so to speak, other kids his age were still playing with sticks in the street. You know, because that was the rule. So you're this age, you should go play. Like, no, you know what I mean? So the experience is about acknowledging your most authentic desires and rewriting the rule book in such a way that you get to see those desires realized and basically create your own reality in that way. And that will be your best experience. So keep making connections where you can with this card, the experience card. And anyway, there is your past life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections. And the last thing would be the timeline we talked about. If you've ever been pulled towards that historical era, whether it is England or New York, those hubs, we're looking at the cusp like 1900, but mid 1800s kind of thing, the 19th century. If that ever pulled at you, whether aesthetically, culturally, learning about the history of the places, that kind of thing, that would be a connection as well. But yes, so keep making connections, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're able to make some connections here, and thanks for letting me read you.